Hello everybody, a warm welcome to all of you. I am Vinay Nathan, co-founder and CEO of Altizon. Thank you so much for joining this webinar around digital transformation with industrial IoT. It's great to see the interest this has generated, and I really look forward to having an ongoing dialogue with everybody in this call on this particular topic. So what we plan to cover really is what is digital transformation all about, and how can the industrial Internet of Things be used to drive digital transformation. And we are using this more as an experience sharing kind of a session, so that it's more useful in terms of the practitioners for how you can look at actually implementing this within your enterprises or for your customers. So let's dive straight in. Any questions that you may have, do please send into the questions message so that I can then have a look and cover them towards the end of this webinar. So we'll cover about 15-20 minutes of a few slides to kind of set the context, and then hopefully we have a few minutes to run through a few of the questions that you guys have raised. So a big goal for businesses today is really to drive digital transformation. And when we talk of digital transformation, it's not just about the digitization of your business, but really going into the realm of reimagining your business, keeping the digital paradigm front and center in that thought process. So the best way to kind of talk about what is digital transformation, I felt, is the two great examples that at least I have come across and have a lot of discussion with a lot of our peers around. One of them, incidentally, both are from the transportation side. One of them is Bridgestone Tires, and the other is the cab company Uber, right? So one revolutionized an entire industry by kind of eliminating the entire management overhead and digitizing all of it. And Bridgestone really reimagined their whole business by offering the commercial fleet side of it, by offering tires as a service model, completely a different lateral kind of a thought process from the erstwhile model of actually selling tires, right? So that, to my view, is kind of the best, some of the best examples that you can get around, how you digitally transform your business. And when we talk of digital transformation, it is this kind of impactful transformation that we are really discussing about. And definitely the time has come for all enterprises to look at this very closely, as either they are going to drive this or they're going to be driven by somebody that is doing that in their ecosystem. So with that, it's typically very useful when you talk of something of this magnitude to kind of think of it in the context of a framework, right? And no matter what individual frameworks you guys might choose to use, it's important to have some kind of model in mind as we approach digital transformation, because it can cover many aspects of a business. So for the purposes of this call and to set the context, I thought of sharing this borrowed slide from an image that is oft quoted. This one covers essentially what is it that we mean by digital transformation, and it talks of it in the context of the customer experience that one desires as a company, the operational process advantage that can be gained out of digital transformation, and it also goes into what is the business model impact that a digital transformation activity can have. So in a sense, these are the three different facets of digital transformation, and we found it very useful to think of digital transformation in the context of these three facets, because it really helps you dig deep into a customer's business problems or their business practices and look at what are the areas that might have a maximum impact from digital transformation. And again, the interesting point is, how does all of this align with the industrial Internet of Things or the Internet of Things paradigm, right? So let me just quickly go over each one of these areas in the context of what it means for gaining an advantage through the Internet of Things. So the customer experience angle is really driven around IoT has enabled you to get more and more products connected at work. And what that really means is that you get to know a lot more about your customers and how your customers use your products. In fact, you can collect data at scale on usage patterns from all your products, even if your products run in millions out there in the customer footprint, you still can do that for some reason, and so I wasn't able to get going. So, this is really the first slide that I was talking through about the three different customer experience, operational process and business model aspects of digital transformation, the framework that I was mentioning, and what I was really launching into was how can you drive or use IIoT for driving an advantage using these three kind of broad concepts, right? So the first, in terms of customer experience, as we were stating, is really about understanding how your customers use your products better and whether you can collect data at scale from all your products and be able to analyze them for understanding how you can drive better customer experience, right? The second layer with respect to operational processes, and this is something that GE speaks about a lot, is really the cumulative transformation that can be achieved via, gaining like a 1% advantage to a whole series of business processes, and thereby cumulatively driving a huge competitive or operational advantage within the context of a supply chain or an enterprise. So that is again something that IIoT is really tuned for doing, because now you're talking of, in the context of IIoT, having machine data even cross boundaries of organizations and be made available across an entire ecosystem for people to improve upon their operational processes. And we'll work with you on one example as a case study in terms of how we have seen that as an impact. And finally, and this is something that is obviously very interesting for us in the context of, can we imagine new products and services that come out of this kind of activity? And we spoke about Bridgestone being an example, and even Uber is an example of of a new digital business emerging out of trying to achieve digital transformation in the entire ecosystem. So while I've presented these three different facets of digital transformation, what is equally true as we looked at different customer examples and work with different practitioners is that you embark on any one of these and typically you end up having an impact on the other two also. So it's not as if you do one against the other. Pretty much anything that you do will have an impact across all three layers. And as we leave this slide, I just want to walk you through to one more aspect of it, in the sense that what you see on the right is the different verticals where we have had a play, we have had a chance to work on different kinds of interesting solutions, and these seem to be the first movers, if you will, in terms of verticals where we are seeing a whole host of activity happening in the industrial IoT domain for solution providers. Okay. So with that context, let me dig a little deeper into what is it that industrial IoT as a medium can drive in terms of digital transformation, and then walk you through a use case against how we've done it for one of our customers. At its heart, as you guys know, the Internet of Things is about getting things connected, thereby driving data from them onto centralized systems and platforms that can get a better pulse of their functioning across the board, right? And in some cases, they can be used to automatically adjust operational parameters for better service, like the Nest type of products that you've seen. And in other cases, you use them to predict anomalies and provide fixes, in the several connected health kind of use cases that you see. So when you talk of industrial IoT in particular, and let's use the manufacturing world as an example, what we are really talking of, be it on the shop floor or be it on the field, right? What we are talking about is tapping into sensor data from machines that can help drive some transformative impact. Okay, and that's how we look at it at Altizon. And in our opinion, these untapped sensor data assets are a key ingredient to touch upon all three facets of the digital transformation that we mentioned earlier, be it customer experience, be it the operational process side or the business model side. And all of them can be impacted by really tapping into this unique stream of sensor data assets that exists within the context of an industrial entity. So at Altizon, we really like to think of it as a cycle, a cycle where you kind of connect any kind of industrial equipment to be able to tap into sensor data that they are collecting, process that data at scale, drive analytics so that you have an ability to learn and understand and act on these inputs. And it's like a cycle, that continues forever in terms of being able to do this over and over. So Let me walk you through a customer use case to better illustrate my point. So one of our customers is, a major manufacturer of industrial pumps, and we started working with them around the concept of getting more and more of their industrial pumps connected, right? And so initially the only high-end pumps were connected, and what IoT really allowed them to do was tap into and get a huge portion, almost 50 to 60% of their product portfolio connected, because with IoT and the fact that you have compute technology and cellular connectivity, fairly abundant, and on top of that the cost structures for all of these continuously diminishing, they were able to work with a model wherein they could get 50 to 60% of their industrial pumps connected. And that was a big driver for them, because they sensed that by doing this, the initial focus that they had really was around enhancing their customer experience so that they can provide better customer support. Okay, so that was the real main goal that they had in mind. So we worked with them, help them design and spec out modules that can go along with the pump as it leaves the shop floor. And what that module does is tap into sensors, as you can see, sensors that already exist in these pumps that give various kinds of sensory inputs around suction, bearing, vibration, around a dozen of these that could be tapped into, and all of that data basically shows up on our Altizon's flagship product, the Database platform, which is a cloud-based platform for collecting and aggregating this, and also look at doing advanced analytics on this data, right? So once this data is collected and aggregated and it's then churned and analyzed, they were able to basically provide alerts, triggers, and notifications on all kinds of anomalies that might occur as the pumps function out there on the field. And this was something that was unique, because essentially what IoT was enabling was an always on kind of condition monitoring, as compute elements and the sensor network or cellular networking infrastructure allowed them to tap into pretty much a very large portion of the product portfolio that was out there in the field. Now, by having a much better handle on how their pumps perform on the field, because they would otherwise only get called in when there was a support request, some downtime or whatever, and they had no idea how the pump actually landed up in that particular state, right? Now what they had was the entire data access in terms of how that pump had been functioning, and therefore when a customer called, they had better insight into the what the pump did, and they could diagnose problems better. And in general, their support staff was better equipped to handle customer queries, and therefore their customers were definitely quite happy with the fact that they are getting a better response, and the downtime that they are experiencing on some of these assets has had a positive kind of outcome. So as we worked with them on these kinds of problems and got them up and running, more and more interesting ideas sprouted up, and the overall advantages and benefits that this kind of infrastructure yielded helped them build upon this new core concept that they had in mind. So since they had better data on field failures, what that have meant was that they were now in a better position to find out what kinds of production level changes can they do on the shop floor so that their products perform better on the field. Essentially marrying operational data on the field with the operational parameters that are used in the production process. So that was something that was fairly unique and interesting that they did. And in addition to that, as they looked at the usage patterns of their pumps on the field, another advantage that they got was that they could better predict the spare part and inventory levels that their spares and consumables could yield on the field, right? So previously they would go only by historical data, and the demand forecasting and all of that always had gaps. Now with this kind of infrastructure in place, they had a large ripple effect of the small changes that they were doing all over the place, right? So as we looked at it, and in the context of a digital transformation of their business line, this attacked all three areas that we spoke about. They were able to enhance customer experience, they were able to enhance their operational efficiencies by implementing this kind of infrastructure, and finally they also were able to offer new products by way of new managed services to their customers by better understanding how their products were used out there on the field. So this, essentially covered the entire digital spectrum of, what can be done. And, this is one example of how digital transformation really had a huge impact on this particular company's product line around pumps. So with that, I do want to kind of spend a few minutes, on one more key aspect that we found useful when you look at driving digital transformation. And this is again a borrowed slide, and we found it useful, and it's very worthy to mention because this sometimes gets shortchanged, right? Digital transformation is like a huge change that you're driving in a particular business. So it's not like selling another IT product. Really what you're trying to do here is, work on the disruptive leaders who really believe that and are the change agents around trying to make this kind of a change happen within their enterprise. And locating these, getting their buy-in, and working with them top down is probably the only way you are going to be in a position to drive this change amongst your customers. The other two key stakeholders that it would be really helpful to identify upfront are obviously your supporters and the people that are enablers, who very often are going to basically be circumspect about the cultural shifts that you're trying to drive within the context a digital transformation activity, right? So in the context of the pump example that I just mentioned, the CXO layer was absolutely on board in terms of wanting to do this activity. The operational folks, basically could see a business case, but then you also had to work with a lot of people who needed to be worked through the process of what this meant for the company. And it is a long drawn out process, a 6 to 9 month process to be able to drive this change and then get into the actual work associated with setting up the digital infrastructures for driving this change. So the time that it takes to kind of drive this cannot be underestimated. The effort that it takes to drive this cannot be underestimated. And we really believe that when you talk of industrial IoT and driving digital transformation via industrial IoT back into the community, we have to look at this from all the angles that we just covered on this particular note. So with that, I kind of cover the slide deck.